I just keep thinking, Major League Baseball, the players and the owners can't be this dumb. And by the way, I keep thinking the same thing about the NBA. Yesterday, we got news that Legoland, the Universal Studios in Orlando, Disney World's Magic Kingdom, Animal Kingdom, and Epcot are all going to be open by July 15th. Next week, you are going to be able to go to Harry Potter World, and you're not going to be able to watch Major League Baseball or the NBA on television without fans present. Little League Baseball is starting back up in many parts of the country by June 1 or middle June. Basketball is starting up in many parts of the country. Parents are going to games and sitting and watching their kids play, and yet pro sports can't get their act together. Right now, the focus is on Major League Baseball, but why in the world is the NBA saying they hope to be back by the end of July or early August? This should take no time at all. Both sports should be back sooner rather than later. There's no reason why every player out there couldn't agree to be in training camp by June 1st. This is all lunacy. Major League Baseball in particular, because right now they are focused on entirely money. And let me be straightforward and clear and not leave any shadows or uncertainty here. If Major League Baseball players and owners cannot quickly come to an agreement here to bring back baseball, they will forever cripple the sport. There are 40 million people who are unemployed, or there will be by later this morning when the newest unemployment report comes out. Of the people who have kept their jobs, almost all of them have taken pay cuts or alterations in their schedule in some way. This is one of the worst looks that I have seen for any pro sports league in my lifetime, to be unable to figure out how to be back. Major League Baseball should already be back if they had a good, strong union and leadership among the owners. This would have been worked out months ago. The risk from a health perspective to players is negligible. There is virtually none. You are under more danger driving to and from the stadium than you are from the coronavirus if you are a young and healthy person in pro sports. You are under more likelihood of being struck by lightning if you are under the age of 24 than you are of dying of the coronavirus. This is not complicated. This is straightforward. This should have been worked out months ago. The latest comments came from Max Scherzer last night, who's on the Major League Baseball committee that responds to the owners, and he said, as I follow last night, after discussing the latest developments with the rest of the players, there's no reason to engage with MLB in any further compensation reductions. We have previously negotiated a pay cut in the version of prorated salaries, and there's no justification to accept a second pay cut based upon the current information the union has received. I'm glad to hear other players voicing the same viewpoint and believe MLB's economic strategy would completely change if all documentation were to become public information. Here's the deal. We don't care. This isn't complicated. Owners and players, management and labor have been arguing for all of mankind about what players should receive in compensation, what workers should receive in compensation compared to management. And it's pretty straightforward, I think, for all of you out there to understand that Major League Baseball is going to make significantly less money as a result of the coronavirus. The Major League Baseball owners have been focused on trying to be as fair, it seems to me, as possible. When they came out and said, hey, let's split revenue 50-50 with the players. We have no idea what the revenue is going to be because we're not sure how many games we're going to get in or even if we're going to be able to finish the postseason. So let's try to work together. That's what they suggested to Major League Baseball players. That seemed eminently reasonable to me. We have no idea how much money this season is going to make. We are going to give you 82 games to play, and then we want to play the postseason. We'll expand the postseason, and we will split revenues right down the middle with all of you. I don't understand how that's not eminently reasonable. The players said that was a non-starter, so the owners are continuing to try to come up with situations that work. And one of the things they've tried to do is protect the income of the guys who make the least in Major League Baseball, which is the vast majority of them. And so I just don't get it. I don't get the decision by the players to adopt this position. I don't understand how the players don't comprehend that if there aren't any fans for the entire season, that Major League Baseball revenue is going to plummet. I don't understand how everybody isn't working expeditiously towards a more rapid return to play. None of this makes sense to me. And look, I honestly believe that if you let me put my lawyer hat on, and if you put me in a room with the owners and the players and said, Clay Travis, you are mediator, get a deal done before the day is over, I feel like I could get a deal done before the day is over just by being reasonable and also maybe by making everything public. If you let me take my mediation and put it on Periscope and let everybody watch the players and the owners be arguing with each other at a time when 40 million people are unemployed and when sports fans out there just want the games back, I think you would recognize how much lunacy is involved here. In particular, again, I just want to come back to the fact that you're going to be able to go to Legoland on Friday, tomorrow. You're going to be able to go next week to Harry Potter World at Universal Studios in Orlando. You're going to be able to go to SeaWorld. Can you even comprehend how open our society is becoming for many parts of the country with the fact that Major League Baseball can't get this worked out? Little League Baseball is restarting all over this country. High school baseball and softball are restarting all over this country. Many of you out there, including me, are getting geared up now for sports in the summer for your young kids, and you're going to be going and watching them play as a part of that. And Major League Baseball somehow can't get this figured out with months that they've known all of this is coming in their direction. Here's the other thing. I don't understand how this isn't an easy fix. I mentioned this yesterday, but it seems like a thoroughly reasonable solution that would make sense for both players and owners. Okay? And I don't want to get all into the weeds here, but I just want you to think about this for a minute. Major League Baseball players are worried about this year's compensation and the fact that it may be nowhere near what they contracted for. As a result, they are being incredibly recalcitrant in terms of these negotiations. Why can't owners add extra years for the Mike Trouts of the world on the back end of these deals and say this year in particular does not have to count in any way as a part of your contract? We are going to add an additional year of compensation on the back end of your deals. This year, you will play for much less, but it effectively will be a brand new deal. And if you want to make sure that you're making $35 million and you're not actually costing yourself any money, in theory, we will add another year onto your contract so you will still get the full amount that you are contracted for plus whatever you end up making in a shortened season this year. If you are younger and you aren't making very much money and you want this year to count towards your free agency, then you could also have that option as a player. In other words, players could have the right to determine how to count this season as a purpose of their contract. If you're a young player and you're not making very much money and you want to get to free agency more quickly than you ordinarily would, then you can work that out. If you are a older player and you've got a big contract and you're worried that you're taking a pay cut, add another year to your deal and you will still get all of the money that you have contracted for. This seems like an easy solution. Let's go play ball. I'm going to bring in the crew. Do you guys agree with me that Major League Baseball is looking awful in being unable to get a deal worked out, and that players and owners don't even comprehend how tone deaf they look to the most of the fans out there who are dealing with 40 million unemployed, who are dealing with a huge majority of the country being either unemployed or working on reduced salaries during this pandemic, and many people out there saying, my God, how can Major League Baseball not get this solved?
Well, I think you know how I feel about it. Weeks ago, when you first brought this all up, I told you it felt like a slap in the face. Now it's starting to feel like a pimp slap now, because everybody around me, my girlfriend, who I haven't spoke to in about a week, by the way, because she has had a mini meltdown over not receiving unemployment and not being able to go back to work. My younger brother, same boat. Close friends, same thing. If I text them, I get sad faces back and complaints about the fact they can't get a hold of EDD. It has affected so many of our lives. Everybody around me is depressed in a major way right now because they cannot get their paycheck the way they normally do. And then I'm going to have to read every day about these millionaires and billionaires squabbling over money. It's beyond a bad look at this point. I don't want to read about it anymore. And until they get this ish together, then that's when I'll, sit back and be like, oh, okay, then I'll think about watching baseball. At this point, though, I don't even want it to be in the news, Clay. That's how much it bothers me.
Dub, what's your read on this?
I mean, it is a horrible look. And baseball, I'm not the biggest baseball fan in the world, and I think there's a lot of people in my boat. Obviously, when you look at the ratings over the past several years in terms of how many people are watching these games on television, I mean, I really have no reason to even watch baseball on TV whenever they do end up coming back. And I think there's a lot of people in my boat as well. They're going to lose a lot of people over this because, like Danny G just laid out, there are so many people that have been affected by what's been going on over the past months. And for guys with billions of dollars and guys with millions of dollars not to be able to figure something out and agree on something, because it doesn't even seem like there's anything close to an agreement coming in the near future. I'm not very confident at all that this is going to get worked out anytime soon, and it's not a good look at all.
What they don't seem to realize is owners and players are in a partnership about the legacy of the league. And the equity of baseball is what they are drawing out of right now. And that equity and that reservoir of goodwill can be particularly susceptible to destruction in a situation like this. Because your average person, $1 million, they're not going to see in their life, much less $1 billion. People who are struggling in their own economic reality don't want to hear it. I think Danny G's very accurate that many of you are just incredibly frustrated to have to deal with a story like this playing out in public. The squabble between millionaires and billionaires is not something that endears itself to the average fan. And you might be able to understand or deal with this a little bit better when times in the economy are really good and, the unemployment rate is low and most people don't really have very much to worry about. But right now, more so than almost any time in our country's history, sports really needs to be there, I believe, to be an escape and a sense of normalcy for many people. That you can just sit down on your couch, that you can put on your favorite local team, and you can veg out for a couple of hours and watch baseball, get lost in the rhythms of summer and the timelessness of the sport. And the fact that they are unable to work out a solution and that it's playing out in public like this is, I believe, the worst look for baseball in my life. I think it's worse than steroids because I think there are a lot of people out there that assume that a lot of athletes are doing whatever it takes to be really, really good. And while there was a small minority of people who were really, really offended by steroids and weren't going to watch, this, I believe, hits at everybody. And it's not just the casual fan that Dub was referencing. It's everybody. It's the hardcore fan. It's the casual fan. It's your average American. They're sitting around saying this is lunacy. And I'll be honest with you, a part of me wonders whether there could be value in somebody in a political position stepping in and saying, "Hey, you idiots, let's get this worked out right now." Like if the president of the United States called and said, "Hey, this is insane. You guys need to be back sooner rather than later. I'm going to put somebody from the NLRB on out here to get this thing resolved, the National Labor Relations Board." Somebody in government to say, "No, we're not dealing with this anymore. You've got 3 days to get yourselves in order here. You need to be playing baseball. I'm putting somebody in charge. You guys have lost the right to be able to drive this ship yourself." I actually would consider that to be a possibility here. What about you, Eddie Garcia? Is this as bad of a look for you as the rest of us feel?
Yeah, I think there's no question about it. And we had our friend of the show, John Paul Morosi, on, and he and others have been practicing patience. It's just, let's see where we are in a couple of weeks, and that's all fine. But if we're talking about right now, it looks absolutely awful. It just looks like a big whizzing contest between the two sides at this point with things that Max Scherzer had to say. And maybe if they do come back, all this will be sort of forgotten by most people. But if they don't, it's a disaster. It's something that, they're going to lose. They're going to lose fans. A significant number of fans, I would think. If they don't have a season, it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, look, there are a lot of people tweeting me right now. You can always find me at Clay Travis, and Aaron just sent this message. Grew up watching Cardinals baseball. Been to hundreds of games in my 38 years. If the greedy players don't understand the magnitude of the situation and don't play, I'm out on baseball. Many people have lost their jobs, and many, many more have taken pay cuts. It's a level of cluelessness that I just, sometimes when you become incredibly wealthy, you can get lost in your own universe and forget what the real world is like. And I'm afraid that that's what's going on with the millionaires and the billionaires in baseball right now. Roberto, are you fed up?
It's definitely not a good look. I agree, but this is how the negotiations between the owners and the MLBPA has always been. Back in 2000, when the CBA expired, people thought there would be another strike, and and how terrible it's going to be. They're going to go on strike again, and they ended up reaching a deal at the last minute. Yeah, it doesn't look good, but I feel like they're going to reach a deal the last minute here. And the other problem is that the CBA expires next year, so the owners are trying to create a rift between the union so they can get ahead in negotiations and weaken the union before they negotiate again next year.
Well, the challenge for players is this may not be just a one-season impact. And we don't know. We'll see what happens when it actually gets cold again. Right now, the coronavirus cases are disappearing in a large measure, but there's not any guarantee that we're going to have a vaccine. And so the same thing might start emerging next year. So if anything, Major League Baseball players should have wanted to be back playing a month ago. The fact that there's so little forward thinking here and that we're talking still about, at best, being back by July 4th is not a good look. And by the way, I don't think it's a good look for the NBA either.